Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. My name is Stacey Rain, and today we are going to learn about the Mental Health Association of Nassau County, a not-for-profit membership organization that advocates for the needs of adults and children with psychiatric and emotional difficulties. Their services assist individuals facing chronic and serious mental illness and psychiatric disabilities, supporting them on their paths to building productive and meaningful lives. Let's meet Malika Watson, the Director of the Education and Training, and Rachel Priest, Behavioral Health Educator. Malika and Rachel, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you for having us.
So first, tell us, what is the Mental Health Association of Nassau County?
So the Mental Health Association of Nassau County, affectionately referred to as MHANC, was founded in 1953 by a group of individuals who saw a need for advocacy and services for individuals within our community who were struggling with mental health challenges and really could not advocate for themselves. So our agency was founded on the fact that we wanted to make sure services were provided for those who needed it.
How long have each of you been with the Mental Health Association of Nassau County? Rachel, let's start with you.
So I have been there just shy of 13 years. I started as an intern when I was in graduate school and worked my way through part-time up till now where I've been full-time for quite some time.
Wow. And Malika?
I'll be at MHA going on 4 years in November. So I came the height of the pandemic.
Oh, wow. What was that like when you were coming in on that?
It was very interesting. I'm sure you remember, all of our mental health took a decline.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In 2020. And so coming into a space where that was literally the core of the work that we did was very, very interesting to say the least. And that's encompassing of all types of things. But at large, the community was great, meaning the employees, the staff, the logistics. They did a great job of keeping everything running given what we were experiencing. But yeah, I make 4 years in November, which is wild to me.
Goes fast, doesn't it?
Time flies.
So what are your backgrounds? What brought you to the Mental Health Association?
I actually met Rachel, funny enough. I met Rachel at a community meeting years ago. And at the time, I was doing other work within the mental health space, but more so geared toward addiction. And so I did a training at MHA, and that's how we connected. And the opportunity came, like I said, during the pandemic again. And so I reached out and got a call back, and here I am. That's literally how I landed here. Before this, I was doing more community-based work. I went to school for criminal justice, so that's a whole nother story. I tell people I wanted to be Olivia Benson, just a little darker. You know what I mean? I'm Black because your audience can't see me, so there's that. But I wanted to be Olivia Benson, and then getting into that criminal justice work, I realized that the community that I grew up in, the community that I serve at large, was not well versed in what mental wellness looked like. And so I kind of just read an article, and that took me to a class, that took me to another class, and literally here we are like over 10 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing such good work in the community. And Rachel, what about you?
So before I worked in mental health, I worked for a very large publishing and sweepstakes company for about 4 years. And unfortunately, I was laid off. But for me, I always say that was the best experience of my life. I was not doing well. I did not like the work. I was suffering with my own mental health. And I realized that my struggles and my recovery could be put to use. And even though I already had one master's degree in art, I decided to go back to school and work in community health, which is kind of how I got wrapped into the internship, which went from, working 1 day a week at, MHA to 2 days to part-time. I realized that I can leverage both my art degree and my community health degree together to really bring health literacy and mental health awareness to the community. And that's really how I kind of found my niche within the whole mental health and behavioral health space.
Wow. So you're using art at the Health Association?
So the way I use art specifically is with our social media and our advertisements.
Okay.
While there is, art for individuals who are going through recovery, I use it to make sure those who are learning about our services can do so in a way that's easy for them and a way that makes sense and kind of draws them in. So with eye-catching colors, graphics, designs, all of those different things. A lot of people don't realize when you work within the health field, there is so much more than just, one-on-one work.
So tell us about some of the services that you guys provide.
Oh, man, there's so many. Well, we are specifically education and training. And so we, as the education and training department, make sure that there are trainings that are applicable to clinicians throughout all of Nassau since the pandemic, really, all over the world, right? Literally, at least all over the country. We make sure that there are trainings applicable to them so that they can become well-versed and remain well-versed in the trends, the signs, the symptoms, the language, just all of the things that are encompassing of the work that they do. And we provide these trainings at a very, very, very minimal cost, sometimes none at all, so that clinicians can get the services that they need to provide what they need to provide to their clients. Outside of that, let me see, we have care coordination, right? Tell me when I'm missing something. We have our PROS program, our SOAR program. So these programs are more versed for the community so that, again, people who do not have access to services like group services, right? Or group, what's the word I'm looking for? Group therapy, if you will, right? Like these programs are available for them. We have a housing program, CLP, community living program, that allows for people to come and kind of get a break from what they might perhaps call the real world, right? Where they're able to now take a second, become more acclimated to the real world by getting the things that they need. So that could look like, again, another program, financial management, that helps them take their monies and become more secure with them, teaching them processes and protocols to make sure that they're governing their finances appropriately. I feel like I'm missing something. Our peer program is a big one, right? You want to talk about the peer program?
Sure. So our peer program has gone through many different names and changes throughout the history, the 70 plus years that we've had our agency. It's one of our biggest programs as well. People may be familiar with it under the name Consumer Link. Throughout history, recovery has had different types of names for individuals in recovery. So consumers has been typically one of those names that's been used. Now we are calling it our peer services. The entire program is staffed by individuals with lived experience in the mental health and substance use world. There are no clinicians within that program. There are support groups run by others with lived experience. There is our phone link program that operates for individuals who are not in crisis, but it's called a warm line. So if they're looking for support or services or want to just talk to somebody because they feel lonely, they can call. No charge. It's available for them. But the biggest part of our consumer, program is our Turquoise House 1 and 2, which are peer respite programs that allow individuals who feel like they may be almost at a crisis, but not quite, and would also like to avoid going to the hospital. So they can apply to be part of this respite house, 1 or 2, and they can come in and really take a break and work on their recovery skills, work on their medication management if they're on it, learn how to do, some art or maybe music that makes them feel more comfortable, and be around people who are in recovery that can help them get through that moment that could have been a crisis but wasn't. So that's one of our largest programs that we do like to make sure people know about.
So they can be around people who are a positive influence.
Absolutely.
And also learn some new skills to help them.
And it's important to mention that even though this program is not clinical, the people who are, our coworkers who staff this program are New York State certified peer specialists.
Oh.
So they've gone through training, they've gone through volunteer hours working towards, what a peer specialist would do. So they do have, a lot of training in their back pocket that if somebody is struggling, they can say, hey, let's try this. Let's try that.
So they're trained especially to do what they're doing, even though they're peers. You were listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. I'm Stacey Rain, and today we're talking with the Mental Health Association of Nassau County, a not-for-profit membership organization that advocates for the needs of adults and children with psychiatric and emotional difficulties. Our guests are Malika Watson, the Director of Education and Training, and Rachel Priest, behavioral health educator. Malika, you were talking about programs for clinicians earlier, and I'm really interested in that. It didn't occur to me that there would also be training programs for clinicians. Can you give me an example of what that looks like?
So in order for, let's say, a licensed mental health, licensed social worker to retain their licensure, they need to, after a certain amount of years, is it 3 or 5? After 3 years, they need to take trainings to make sure that, like I said, they are well versed in the work that they're doing, right? Things change, trends change, language changes. And so in order to do that, they're required to take a certain amount of credits towards their license to make sure that they are doing exactly that, maintaining relevancy within the field. And so those trainings could cost upwards of hundreds of dollars, literally, right? Like that could be an overnight conference, that could be a day conference, that could be a Zoom conference these days, and it's going to cost you a pretty penny. And so sometimes people might stay away from these trainings or the best of the best simply because it's just not affordable, right? This field is a field that people get into because they want to help, not necessarily because they want to be millionaires, right? And so to be able to spend hundreds of dollars for one training is a big, especially in this economy. I mean, that's no joke. That's a serious thing. And so we have been granted the opportunity to be able to provide top of the line trainings, numerous trainings weekly to clinicians. So long as they stay on the entire time, they're getting the credits that they need. They're getting the information that they need. A lot of times they get the slide deck after, so they could go back. If they don't retain the information the first time, they could go back and print it out or read it. And this is made available to them, like I said, sometimes at no cost at all, or max a very nominal fee.
Wow. So you guys are really working to keep everyone up to speed in this county then.
That's the goal. And honestly, anyone can take the training. It's really our goal is to make sure that these things are available to literally anyone, so that this is not gate-kept information, right? Our goal is to see wellness for everybody, but they're geared specifically toward clinicians.
And so then you were talking about the community education. Can you guys give me an example of what one of those education programs looks like?
So when we work within the community, a lot of times I get phone calls or emails now that say, we have a problem, or we have an issue, or we're not exactly what we want, but we know we want it to be about mental health. We want it to be about wellness. So one of the things that we offer is a program called Mental Health First Aid, which is a national program run by the National Council on Behavioral Well-Being. They just changed their name, so it's a little dicey still, which is depending on, there's so many different modules of it at this point. But the main module is for adults, and it's an 8-hour course that teaches individuals how to respond to mental health issues within the community, within their family, not teaching them to be clinicians, but how to work with somebody and get them to the help that they need. So this is a course that we offer for community members. We also offer suicide prevention courses for community members, and really just anything that they're looking for about mental wellness, we try to connect them to an appropriate class that they could take. If we don't offer it, we are more than happy to find them, some sort of resource that could be something that helps them. They really just have to call or email us if they're looking for it.
What a great service. So not only are you helping them with the programs you offer, but you're helping them find something if you don't offer it. Wow, that's fantastic. I was reading on your website, one of the things that you said is we believe that recovery is possible. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, that's really our CEO. That's honestly a line that he uses, I want to say, any and every time you come in contact with him. And I think that the goal is to just remind everyone, whether you identify as a person with lived experience or not. And the truth is, we've all experienced something, right? At some point, our mental health has been affected. Whether that leads to a diagnosis, or that leads to medication, or that leads to a couple of therapy sessions, or it leads to just some extra self-care, whatever that looks like, wherever you fall on the spectrum. We've all experienced a decline in our mental health at some point. And so I think that the phrase recovery is possible is really said often within MHA to remind all of us, and then those that we come in contact with, that hope exists, really, that wherever we land, there is room for us to be better. And while recovery looks different for everybody, it's still a possibility. Recovery for me might not look like recovery for Rachel, and recovery for Rachel might not look like recovery for the next person, but it's important to note that it's a possibility. And so as long as I can identify what recovery looks like for me, there's a chance of me getting there.
Absolutely.
And can I just add to that? When we talk about recovery being possible, especially not just at our agency, but at large, we always make sure that the person who is experiencing that recovery is in the center of everything driving their own recovery. It's person-centered. So the decisions that are made with the person who is experiencing an issue or a crisis or anything that's happening to them, right? One of the big things that we say, nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
So we are part of the conversation. So we're part of what's happening.
Okay. Yeah, I was reading on your website that 1 in 5 adults live with mental illness. So like you were saying, I mean, at some point you may have less than optimal mental health.
Absolutely. And it's just like our physical health, right? I mean, we all fall on the spectrum of something having to do with physical health, right? A common cold. For one person, that could look like bronchitis. For someone else, that could look like just a quick Robitussin. You know what I mean? And so it's important to note that the same is true for mental health. It affects all of us because we all have to deal with it at some point. And again, this idea of recovery being possible really just goes to show that as long as we keep ourselves at the center of it and keep our own realistic expectations at the heart, it is possible to get or be better. And that's really the goal. Not perfection, just better.
Right. And we were talking about earlier that when COVID happened, you know, so many things changed, including people's mental health.
Yes.
So what are some of the changes that you all have seen over the last few years as far as the need for your services?
I would probably say, and we're education and training, so we can't speak as directly to it as the clinicians within the agency can, but just based on what I observed, especially from the clinician standpoint, clinicians have asked for more training for sure. We have we have clinicians who don't miss a training. And we're doing upwards of 7 to 8 trainings a month, and that's pretty conservative, you know. And we have clinicians who don't miss a training because it's important, because you literally cannot get enough information these days. And so I would say that's one of the things that have changed. People are more aggressive about making sure they stay on top of trends and statistics and changes, just because things change so frequently these days. If I could speak for clinicians, I would probably say that they've seen an influx of people who were not looking to take care of their mental health before that, did not have mental health crises before the pandemic. And we all know, I mean, we were isolated. We were afraid because we didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, a lot of us had no contact with other people unless it was DoorDash. And even then, they left the food out literally the door, right? And so that takes a toll on your mental health. And a lot of those people who were isolated and didn't have anyone to speak to call on, to have physical contact with, they came out of the pandemic and are still coming out of the pandemic in need of services, in need of help, which is more than understandable, honestly. What would you say, Rachel?
So I would 100% echo everything that Malika has shared. And I've also noticed trainers have asked us for different types of trainings about anxiety. With their, clients that they're seeing, and also for themselves, how to deal with the different types of anxiety that they're still experiencing. Because even though we're all out, we're working with each other, we're seeing each other again, some people are still getting back into the swing of things. It takes some people longer than others, right? And anxiety doesn't go away overnight. So having a plan on dealing with anxiety, and whether it's for themselves or their clients, is really something that I'm noticing, people are asking about for trainings.
You were listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Stacey Rain, and today we're talking with the Mental Health Association of Nassau County, a not-for-profit membership organization that advocates for the needs of adults and children with psychiatric and emotional difficulties. Our guests are Malika Watson, the Director of Education and Training, and Rachel Priest, Behavioral Health Director. So we were just talking about anxiety, and one thing that I have learned over the years is that is something you can learn about. You can learn management techniques. So that's a community class that you guys teach, is stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if someone out there is experiencing anxiety right now, what would you tell them?
One, it's okay to ask for help. You do not have to deal with it by yourself. That's the first part. 2, there are resources available for no fee, sometimes little to no fee. And 3, to make sure that you're surrounding yourselves with people who you notice you feel the best around, right? Where if you feel like your anxiety is exacerbated around certain things or certain people, I know that I don't mean to say that it's always just so possible and easy, but if it is a possibility to step away from those things first and then make a conscious decision to get help, whatever that looks like. One of the things that we've seen and has literally been proven is that the longer you wait for help, the harder it is to come back to a place of whatever you deemed as wholeness, right? And so you want to make sure that on average, we are told that sometimes people take 10 years to get help for a mental health illness. Don't be a part of that statistic. The minute you see signs and symptoms of your body responding differently, of your heart responding differently, of your mind responding differently, seek help. And if you want to start with our website, if you want to start with calling us, please, please, please feel free to do that. And we promise to get you headed in the right direction, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And so tell our listeners what your website is, what the address is and phone number.
So our website is www.mhanc.org. We are located at 16 Main Street in Hempstead, New York. And we can be reached at 516-489-2322.
Wonderful. Thank you. Malika, you mentioned earlier that prior to working at the Mental Health Association, you did some work with addiction. And one of the things that I was thinking been a lot in the news about lately is drug overdose on Long Island. So would you say that that's correlated with mental health? And what are you guys doing to work on that?
100%. 100%. As I had mentioned earlier as well, we're seeing, especially in a post-pandemic world, people who were not showing signs and symptoms of having mental health issues, crises, and sickness sometimes now are, right? And part of that, sometimes we call them co-occurring disorders. Sometimes it's two things happening at the same time. And so sometimes if a person is anxious, if a person is feeling depressed, they might use drugs to cope. Right. And when we were younger, it was a very simple say no to drugs. Right. And that's really all they told us sometimes. But we realize in 2024, it's not that simple. Right. Yeah. There are deeper conversations that need to happen. And so we are finding, especially within Nassau County, within Long Island at large, some would argue this has been an issue for a long time, and it's just now coming to the forefront. And I wouldn't dismiss that at all. And I empathize and hold space for that. That issue as well. But anyway, it's important to note that overdose is a thing, that the abuse and misuse of narcotics is a thing, that fentanyl and drugs being laced is a thing. Yeah. And it's happening on college campuses. It's happening at our upper echelon high schools. It's happening in our offices and our corporate jobs. It's happening in spaces that we would deem as not having an issue with these things, right? And so to answer your question simply, overdose is absolutely, or substance use disorders absolutely falls under the umbrella of mental health crises. And so our goal is to try as best we can, one, raise awareness, and two, provide access to resources to those who might feel either ashamed or just honestly unaware. Yeah. That these things even exist. Sometimes we keep it separate from mental health disorders, but it absolutely is a thing, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. 100%.
Absolutely. And I saw that, a lot of times that's more of an adult or older, I guess, young adult problem with drugs, but you also offer services for children as well. So your organization is both for adults and children, so anyone experiencing a mental health crisis. Is that right?
Exactly that. And again, because we are the Mental Health Association, we literally, if we cannot, we consider ourselves the hub, right? So if we cannot effectively help you in our building, in our space, we are more and have staff who are more than qualified to get you to the appropriate professional, to literally hold your hand and walk you through the process of getting to the appropriate professional. We won't just leave you out there. Right.
And so I see, you help adults, you help children. I see you have a lot of different specialties like helping with addiction, I saw you had veteran services.
Yes.
There's a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot that you guys are doing, or you can point people to. So if someone's having a problem, really they can go to your website, they can give you a call. So does someone have to be diagnosed to come to you? Like, how does that work?
So absolutely, you do not have to have a diagnosis or even think you have a diagnosis to come to us. If you want to get the resources, if you want to, or have a question that you want answered, you can call us and you will be directed to the appropriate department that can really walk you through, as Malika said, hold your hand and find the right service for you. You don't need to have a label. In fact, we don't want to use labels. Mm-hmm. We want to treat the whole person. We want to talk to you, get to know who you are, what you think needs work or what you need help with. And then if we can't help you, we're going to find someone who can. We, are not the only mental health service in Nassau County, and we collaborate with other services when we need to because we can't do it alone.
Right. That to me just is such a special thing that you guys are like, here's what we have, and we have a lot, but we're going to make sure that we get you to the right place. Exactly. And that to me is just so important for our community. You're offering all this stuff free, low cost. Where are you getting the funds to do this? You guys fundraise? What happens with that? So
as Rachel had mentioned in the beginning, we were founded off of what I guess you could call like a membership process or program. Mm-hmm. Now, just like most nonprofits, we're doing the best that we can, but we're grant funded mostly. And then we really just rely on the community. And we have, Long Island is filled with amazing donors who see the work that we're doing. We do conferences. Mm-hmm. We have a walk coming up. We do a walk every October. Okay. And so that walk is for overdose awareness, where we literally do our best to shine a light on those perhaps who have lost loved ones when we're advocating for overdose awareness to be talked about more broadly. And so when organizations see us do work like this for nothing, thankfully, they're generous, and that really keeps us going. And I'm sure if anyone out there knows, nonprofit work, like I said earlier, we're not here necessarily to be millionaires, right? We're here to do work that allows for people to live well.
And some of our clinical services, like our Pros Day program or our CLP community housing or care coordination, if an individual has Medicaid, that's when they can come to us. That's what their insurance is used for those programs. So we do want to mention that we're not going to turn somebody away, but we are going to ask. We ask questions. Do you have insurance? Do you have Medicaid? What is going on for you?
Well, I want to take a minute to thank you both for coming on the My Hometown and remind listeners that you can visit their website at mhanc.org for more information. But thank you for being here, Malika Watson, the Director of Education and Training, and Rachel Priest, Behavioral Health Educator from the Mental Health Association of Nassau County. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and good luck in everything that you are doing.
Thank you so much
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
I'm Stacey Rain, and I thank you for listening to this week's episode of My Hometown.
We'd like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC at ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.